Mother, I taste your tears. In
still in the lobby, good morning. Welcome to Beacon Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Summit, here on the ancestral lands of the Lenni Lenape. Welcome to this community of imperfect people. Hi, Benjamin. Seeking to heal the world as we feed our spirits together. If you're joining us online, please introduce yourself in the chat. My name is Jermaine Cripe. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a member of your Lifespan Ministry team. I'm a plus-size African-American woman with graying and blue locks, wearing a black dress and blue glasses. So many things are happening around here today, and I just want you to be aware of two big important things that are coming out right now. If you're new to our community and would like to get more information about what it means being a beacon and to have a chance to ask questions, please join us after service at 12:15 in our library, where Chris Schomburg, one of our members, and Reverend Dr. Robin Tanner, will actually go through becoming a beacon, connecting at Beacon. At 1 o'clock in Fellowship Hall, our community group leaders will be gathering for an orientation, so please don't forget that if you're a community group leader. You're in for a treat this morning as we have two amazing musicians joining us, Rosina Hill-Jackson, our vocalist, and Vicki Carter, our pianist. We are so grateful that you're here, and I'm looking forward to hearing your music even vicariously as I zip past the rooms with the children. This morning's worship highlights one half of our denomination's name and legacy, Universalism, the belief that all are beloved and welcome and worthy of salvation. Reverend Joan Javier Duval from our Montpelier, Vermont congregation says it thus: whether tears have fallen from your eyes this past week or gleeful laughter has spilled from your smiling mouth, whether you're feeling brave or brokenhearted, defiant or defeated, fearsome or fearful, whether you have untold stories buried deep inside or stories that have been forced beyond the edges of your comfort, whether you've made promises, broken promises, or are renewing your promises, whatever is on your heart, however it is with your soul in this moment, you are beloved and welcome here. So take a deep breath, set down everything you're carrying with you this morning, and in this space of welcome and acceptance, commitment and recommitment, of covenant and connection, let us worship together. Welcome to Beacon.
Good morning. My name is Wim. I am your worship associate today. I identify as male and am tall, white, with curly graying hair and wearing a blue and white striped shirt. And we now light our chalice. This day, we celebrate the spiritual wisdom of universalism, of the strength and courage to declare love can be trusted, believed as source and return, and lived in accordance by all humans. It is an aspiration, a faithful fuel, a spark to animate the fate of inclusion. For this, we kindle our chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism.
Good morning. If you will stand, if you're willing and able, and in your hymnal, the teal, number 118, let us sing This Little Light of Mine. Everywhere I go.
Chi Her, and oh, thank you for the mic. And I am from South Asia, and I have graying hair. And today I'm wearing a blue sweater and a silver necklace.
It's Wonderbox Day! Who would like to come and open up our Wonderbox? Come on up here, Leela. I keep giving the kids names away. They're supposed to introduce themselves. And you are? And how
Leela, and I am 9 years old.
Awesome sauce. Would you open up our Wonderbox and see what's inside? Give it a lift. We didn't
Oh,
lock it.
there we go.
What do you have there?
Like a little boat thing.
A sailboat. Well, thank you very much, Leela. Appreciate it. Let's give her a round of applause. So, a sailboat, Thule. They don't make ships like this with the many sails anymore, do they, Thule?
They don't, certainly not as maybe old looking as this one. But sailing, yes, sailing is still a sport. It's even an Olympic sport. And the biggest race in sailing is called the America's Cup. Nice, very good. Thank you so much.
Well, I don't think the people who were riding on this one were in a race or trying
No,
to do
I don't
something
think
in
they
the
were
Olympics.
racing. I think they were getting on a ship like this, not a boat, a ship, and they were traveling very far. Jermaine, most ships have names, usually on the front part of the ship.
Yeah.
This one doesn't, but do you know what it might have been called?
I believe it was called the Hand in Hand.
Yeah, and where did it sail from, do you think?
England, I believe.
Yes.
A long time ago, over 250 years. Okay, math heads, what year was that? Woo! Not fair, he was in the first service.
And on this ship that sailed so very long ago and so very far, was a person named Reverend John Murray.
What was he like, Reverend John Murray?
Yeah, John Murray lived in England at a time when Christianity was very harsh. People were taught that they were born bad, and children were hit in religious school if they couldn't remember all the details.
Yikes. We won't be doing that for the 8th principles today.
I
just so
should
you know
hope
that. So that sounds awful. How did he become a Universalist?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. He and his wife Eliza were not happy with what they were hearing, and so they went around and visited all the churches in London, and they finally came across a preacher named John Relly, who was a Universalist, and they loved what he was saying so much that they converted to Universalism. John Murray became a lay preacher, but it came at a cost.
Let me guess. His family encouraged him to go back to their old church.
That's right, and times were tough. He lost his business. Eliza and his young son became sick. The medical bills piled up. Sadly, Eliza and his young son passed away, and John was sent to debtor's prison. That's a place you had to go if you owed a lot of money. Eventually, Eliza's brother bailed him out and begged him, go to the New World, what we now call the United States of America, so you're not in danger of being sent back to prison.
Okay, so off they sailed, and like a month later, in their attempt to land in New York City, they ended up landing in Philly.
They didn't have a GPS.
No, and so a bunch of people got off in Philly, and then they shot for New York City again and ended up stuck on a sandbar here in New Jersey.
They were rapidly running out of supplies, getting stuck on that sandbar, right? They had no fresh water, they had no food, and we say that John Murray was the brave soul who volunteered, right?
I wonder, because he was escaping prison, was he voluntold to get off the boat?
Right. Either way, volunteered or voluntold, this was risky business, right? The ship is stuck on the sandbar. The waves are choppy. It's incredibly high winds. It's the kind like if you went to the Jersey Shore and you saw that kind of water, would you go swimming? You'd be like, we're just going to sit on the beach and build some sand castles. But here's John Murray, who's voluntold to go get fresh water and supplies, so he has to risk his life getting off the boat.
Did John Murray even know how to swim?
See, that's one of the things that we don't know and we can wonder about. But I'm sure that whether he was voluntold or volunteered, it was a brave thing to do to step into those very risky waters.
And it must have been a relief for him to land on the shore and run into that friendly farmer, Thomas Potter, who not only gave him the supplies that he needed, but gave him a church in which he could preach the first Universalist sermon in the United States.
And things did turn around for Reverend John Murray, but he never forgot where he came from or what he had gone through.
That is good. And that's a good lesson. Also, it's a good lesson for us to try to ask what the whole story is by asking questions and wondering.
Always keep wondering, always keep asking. That's what we do here. So ends our time for all ages.
Good morning, Beacon. My name is Dennis Mannion. I'm a white male, about 5'9", reddish-brown hair with a few flecks of gray starting to creep in every once in a while. I'm in denial, but they are there. I am a member of our Beacon chaplain team. Our role as chaplains is to extend the spiritual care of our community. We recognize that everyone, including ourselves, needs care at different points of our lives, and as chaplains, we offer ourselves as a one-to-one resource for deep listening, and in that listening, provide a foundation for healing. Another way we extend the spiritual care of our community is by facilitating our weekly ritual of community candlelighting. Today, we light a candle of solidarity with people all over the world, including our own Beacon members, mobilizing, marching, and practicing civil disobedience to demand a sense of urgency in the push to end our dependency on fossil fuels. We light a memorial candle for Isabel Arnston, a longtime Beacon member who died on Friday at the age of 101. For Alphonse Sinati, who passed away this week in Naples, Florida, at 100 years old. He was the grandfather and grandfather-in-law of Beacon members David Sinati and Kathleen Grant, and the great-grandfather of John and Julia Sinati. And a candle for the loved ones of Gretchen Rosenberg, whose life we celebrated here in our sanctuary and memorial service here yesterday. A candle of deep appreciation to our spiritual ancestors from the Jewish tradition as we begin Yom Kippur this evening at sundown. We are reminded in this time of atonement and echoed in our own Beacon covenant of the healing power that comes when we make amends, forgive, and reconnect with an intent to repair, change, and grow. A candle of gratitude for our Universalist ancestor, John Murray, whose miracle story and message of the power of love we celebrate this morning. And finally, a candle of cheers for Mia Morse, who is living the miracle as we speak, competing in a triathlon in the wind and the rain at the Jersey Shore at this very moment. You got this, Mia. For these and for so much more, we invite you to come forward now to light a candle here in our sanctuary or wherever you may be.
Hello, beloved. I'm Reverend Robin. My pronouns are she and her. I am not quite tall, middle-aged woman with shoulder-length brown hair wearing a pink and purple stole. I want to invite you to take in a deep breath if breath is a place of ease for you. I'm going to sound our mindfulness gong to bring us into that rhythm we were gifted at birth on the inhale and the exhale. And then we'll share if you'd like to join me in some prayer. Gracious God of many names, love beyond love. Here in the stillness of this moment, may we experience that radical and all-embracing love our spiritual ancestors believed in with all of their being. The love that they lived for and ultimately rested in. In the corners of our hearts where pain and doubt or injury exist, may the knowledge of this love be a balm this day. Where resentment or ill will toward another resides, beloved, may you find release, a compassion that can heal a wearied heart. And should you have come here this day with sorrow heaped into piles that seem that they will overtake you, may the bittersweetness of memory and the sense of this love to lean into be yours now. May a love beyond love cast out our fears, gift us courage born of our connections and the abiding truth that we are not alone. For the time we are given, may this love in this community hold us, sustain us, and flow freely in our lives, gifted to all whom we meet. So may it be. Blessed be. Amen.
Please join me in singing this next hymn that was written by a Universalist, number 35. Unto thy temple, Lord, we come.
To
divine.
We have two readings today, they're both on Universalism, and they're both written by prominent Universalists in this country. The first one is an excerpt from a treatise on atonement. It was written by Hosea Ballou, who's considered one of the founders of Universalism in the US in 1805. The Universalist, who really is so, prizes his duty as his heaven, as his peace, as his most sublime enjoyment. How then shall we be so lost, so blind, and so deceived as to wish to shun our duty and our happiness? If we really believe those things and desire that others might be brought to see and believe the same, let us endeavor, in the first place, to prove to all men that such a belief is of real service in cultivating our morals and in regulating our behavior. And secondly, by using our abilities as God has given in cool, dispassionate reasoning with those who do not believe, contending for nothing but the principles of love, in meekness and all gentleness. Never argue for the sake of will, nor for mastery. And shunning every appearance of sophistry or deceit, never suffer yourselves to be anxious about the issue of conversation, but speak the words of truth and soberness, and leave the event to be directed by the Spirit of God. Falsehood is so apt to detect itself that an argument is generally best conducted when the disputant is refuted by the consequences arising from his own statements. And if he cannot see and understand them for himself, it will do no good to see them for him. If we can see for ourselves, we do well. The next reading is a little bit more recent. It's from Reverend Jeffrey Campbell, a Universalist from the Nashua Universalist Church, who writes about his own personal experiences growing up in his congregation as a black Universalist in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, where he was often the only person of color in his congregation, which was a mostly white denomination. When I was 9 years old, my mother told me I could go to any Sunday school of my choice. I tried the Methodist and the Baptist, but there weren't any refreshments. I tried the Congregationalists, and they provided seconds. But the Universalists put it down and let me help myself. So 15 years later, the Committee on Ordination asked me why I had chosen that particular denomination. There was nothing to do but to tell them the truth, and they still let me in. By the time I was 12 of age, the paradox between intention and action of Universalism was shaking that little church. Self-satisfied, middle-class people that they were, they had nevertheless been attracted by a faith which preached the fatherhood of God and the universal brotherhood of man. That message had struck sufficiently deeply for them to realize they could not preach or accept their belief while excluding the only youngster of mixed parentage in the Anglo-African sense in the neighborhood. with each stage of my development, the paradox grew sharper. Should I take a role in this or that pageant? What would the conference say if I were to represent the church? Should I be asked to teach a class? Would it be safe to hold box socials where anyone's daughter might? I shall never forget the Committee on Fellowship, which examined me for ordination. 30 minutes on my theology, but 4 hours on my politics and racial attitudes. Finally, the committee voted ordination. It did so with more travail of spirit. They wanted their church to be the kind of institution which could unite its theory with its practice. Inwardly, they knew it was not, nor within the limits of their imagination could they see it becoming such. Failure to ordain me would have been an even more flagrant confession of that same failure. Failure to ordain me would have been an even more flagrant confession of that failure. So goes our reading.
Being a Universalist has always meant living in the tension between the world we can envision and the world we are living in, and navigating that gap with a fervent and unrelenting commitment to love. To a love that is big enough to call us to close the gap. A love that is big enough to call us to love the hell out of the world. From our earliest days of Christianity, the Universalists were there declaring God as a loving parent and saying that eternal suffering, sending any human being to hell eternally, was simply incompatible with a God who was loving. Our earliest known theologian, Origen, writing in the 2nd and 3rd century, believed in free will and taught that he hoped all people would ultimately be reconciled to God. He was a pacifist as well, and despite his loving vision for the world, Origen was tortured by Roman authorities, dying from the torment inflicted on him in prison. After the First Council of Nicaea and with the rise of Christianity as a state religion, Universalism was declared heresy. Universalists who were found were tortured, some were killed, many more sought exile, and Universalism had to move underground to continue for the next several hundred years. It wasn't until the Protestant Reformation that the Universalists began to widely discuss their beliefs once more and even preach, like John Murray. But this was not met with glowing reviews and open arms of progress and transformation. No, because many Christians still believed in the depravity of humanity and the need for a punishing, angry God, as Jonathan Edwards preached, sinners in the hands of an angry God. These Christians did not take kindly to the Universalists. Those like John Murray suffered economic hardship, community exile, but here in the United States, they found a measure of safety and community in the 18th century. By the mid-1800s, Universalists were the 8th largest denomination. Often found in rural communities and among the working class, Universalists were not as concerned with building institutions as the Unitarians were. They were much more committed to transforming people, transforming them away from the fear of an angry God into a trust and reliance upon love. This vision of a loving God saw no separation between humanity and made the Universalists naturally drawn to social justice and to liberal theology. You see, the difference here is that the Universalists didn't place their emphasis on what humans could or couldn't do. In fact, it wasn't all on humanity at all. They put their focus on the nature of God as love, while the Unitarians focused on what they called salvation by character, by working out your goodness. The Universalists emphasized what God had already done. Everyone was already saved. No one beyond love's embrace. Now, the Unitarians and Universalists were often aligned on social justice issues, and even later in religious education, our youth got together long before we merged as one in 1961. But the early days were a little rockier. In fact, the first congregation that I served as an intern was the First Church in Boston, where Charles Chauncey very proudly expelled all of the Universalists from Boston and declared that no Universalist should come into Boston and have one of those dangerous revivals where people would be swept away with motion, and in that emotion do all kinds of reckless behavior. The Universalists also didn't have as much power as the Unitarians. We have 4 American presidents who were Unitarians. The Unitarians were wealthier. The Universalists had smaller schools when they had schools, like St. Lawrence, while the Unitarians had Harvard. If it weren't actually for the alignment between social justice and our youth, we probably wouldn't have become Unitarian Universalists at all. We were an odd couple. But the Universalists are and were an important balance to what some called the head-up worship of the Unitarians, because they understood emotion more than just simple affection. They understood that emotion could be understood as a source of wisdom, and that it was an important balance to rational thought. They emphasize the love of God not as an affection, but as sacred devotion. There's an old joke that captures the differences between the two, saying that the Universalists believed God was too loving to damn anyone to hell, while the Unitarians simply believed they were too good to be damned. My very first congregation that I worked in was a Universalist. You might be able to see my bias this morning. The Universalists were the first denomination to ordain women, and the first woman they ordained was Reverend Olympia Brown. But they struggled with inclusion too, as we heard in the reading shared by Wim of Reverend Jeffrey Campbell, who was welcomed with discrimination in his Universalist church in Nashua and never found a pulpit as a Black Universalist preacher, despite being among the very best of the ministers of his generation. Universalists again and again and again found themselves in the gap between the mercy, love, and justice of a God that they felt and witnessed, and the limitation, the very human limitations of their ability to lean into that love and fully live it. Reverend Jeffrey Campbell experienced that gap. Hosea Ballou warned of it. John Murray was nearly swallowed up by destitution and despair. But this didn't make the great love any less real for the Universalists. In part because their mission was to preach God is love rather than building up institutions. By the time the Unitarians and Universalists merged in 1961, there were very few Universalists left in comparison to the Unitarians, and they didn't have as many assets. So it's no accident. It's not just easier to say with all of the syllables Unitarian Universalist, but there was some truth that the Unitarian came first. It became the dominant voice in our faith in those early years. And you might rightfully ask, I mean, this is nice to celebrate Universalists and all of these antiquated thoughts and sailing on ships of long ago. But with a faith that today has a greater inclusion to atheists, agnostics, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims, and many more, including pagans and earth-based traditions, what relevance does Universalism and a theology of salvation have today? What consequence is that teaching here and now in 2023? I'm so glad you asked. On Monday, I found myself in a jail cell in the 7th Precinct of New York City. I had participated in an action at the Federal Reserve as part of the climate crisis, the March to End Fossil Fuels movement. We were calling on the Federal Reserve to do two things that is within its power as kind of the bank of banks. One is to set regulations on the financing of fossil fuels, to regulate what other banks, major banks, are doing. And two was to release funding to really transform the energy infrastructure in the United States. Think New Deal, right? But Green New Deal. We were also calling on President Biden to declare a climate emergency, as he had promised to do and still has yet to do. Anyway, it had rained that day. It had poured, you might recall. Monday was a downpour, and we were outside. And so by the time that we were zip-tied and placed in those little vans and then transported to the jail, we were soaking wet. And when you get to the jail, they take your coat, they take many of your belongings, and you're left in, you know, a small amount of, in this case, very damp clothing. The jail was also heavily air-conditioned. And the women, or those female identified, were placed 2 by 2 in cells where the vents were right over our head and the air just poured down on us. So there I was with a cellmate, and when you have no devices and you're shivering cold, suddenly you can make friends with literally anyone. And so we huddled close, and I learned a bit more about my cellmate, who is a filmmaker and was born in Spain, has dual citizenship, and moved back to the United States as a teenager. As we were shivering in this 58-degree cell trying to pass the time, she looked at my collar, which I was allowed to keep. This portion of my neck was very warm. And she said, what denomination are you? And I said, oh, I'm a Unitarian Universalist. And she said, oh, I'm an atheist, but you all are really cool. And I said, yeah, we have atheists too. And she said, what? I said, well, let me share a little bit about who we are if you have the time. I said, basically what we believe in is that every single human being has inherent worthiness and dignity, and that no one is beyond transformation. No one is beyond love. Wow, she said. I'm an atheist. You said that. But she said, that makes sense to me. I understand that. Over the next few hours, we shared stories about one another's lives and a little bit more about Unitarian Universalism. She shared about filmmaking, something I know very little about, and I noticed as we sat next to one another, now friends, that I had come into that cell with a fair amount of anger, a little bit of despair with where things are, and exhaustion. And slowly, as we started talking, I watched it melt away. And there in a jail cell, without any devices, shivering and hungry, and with not much to do but just to be human together, I found hope. And I was reminded in explaining our faith of the power and importance of that great love, of believing that no one is beyond love. No one is beyond transformation. Even my greatest enemy is not beyond transformation. I was released from that cell and made my way back out into a balmy New York City day. I was very jealous of the outside temperature relative to what I had experienced. But I came out remembering love as power. It can sometimes feel like we're all alone in what we're doing and that it's inconsequential. But the Universalists remind us it's not all up to each one of us as an individual. There's something greater. Love is a power. I was reminded of it paradoxically zip-tied and held in a cell of none of my own power. I was reminded of our power, of something you can see and witness, that it's not all in my hands. There's more. As the new Article 2 proposal that all UUs are considering to pass in June says, love is the power that holds us together at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living out our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Or as Reverend Olympia Brown once said, when I read of the vain discussions of the present day about the virgin birth and other old dogmas which belong to the past, I feel how great the need is still of a real interest in the religion which builds up character, teaches brotherly sibling love, and opens up to the seeker such a world of usefulness and the beauty of holiness. Love as devotion, as a discipline, is incredibly useful. I don't know about you, I love our Unitarian roots, but rational thought isn't all of who we are. Rational thought doesn't get me out of bed in the morning. Rational thought doesn't give me hope and rekindle my light. I mean, maybe y'all reason your way. And bless you if you do. Rational thought doesn't sustain us. But a love that challenges me to remember that my greatest enemy is not beyond transformation, that none of us are beyond the circle of love, that gives me courage and comfort and hope and calls me to commitment to ask, not is Universalism relevant, but what does Universalism call us to today? How will we love the hell out of the world today? I'm finite and I'm limited. I'm pretty sure everyone here is finite and limited. Anyone infinite yet? Call me. My time is limited, as is yours. My ability to see the solutions and how that arc will bend toward justice is limited, as is each of ours. But the power to transform, the power of love with a capital L, is infinite. After I spoke to my attorney, after I was released, I got on a train and eventually made my way to Hoboken and then home to West Orange. And just as I got to my door, you've probably had this happen once in your life. You go to open the door and it's already in the process of opening. My door swung open and there was 5-year-old Ariana, who's with us through foster care and has been for over a year. Ariana, who's endured more hardship than many adults that I know. Ariana, who despite the oppression and pain of neglect and the turmoil and uncertainty in foster care, came bounding out one more time that door with joy and resilience. "Bo," she said, "Bo! Yay!" I had no idea what she meant. And I was really focused because she was wearing socks and she was running toward the wet grass. And I thought, "You're gonna get your socks soaked. Stop, stop," I said. "Bo," she kept saying, "Bo, Bo, Bo." And finally, I looked up. And that's when I saw them, not one, but two rainbows. We all flooded the sidewalk then. It was like a clown car. I've got 5 kids, and they all just kept coming out of the house. And then Anne-Marie, too. And we stared and bore witness to that harbinger of hope. The love that the Universalists first taught wasn't a feeling or some idea. It wasn't a theological treatise, a hula hooping our way out of hell. It was more powerful than that. It was enough to threaten empire Christianity, enough to undo the state, enough to make a little white church in Nashua face their hypocrisy and racism in the early 20th century, enough to call the denomination to ordain women 56 years before they would get the right to vote. It was visible. It was real. It was love as power. They didn't always trust it. Sometimes we leaned away from it and from each other, but it was far more than an affection. And it is not dead. You see it in the streets, 75,000 people marching to end fossil fuels last Sunday. You can see it in the infinite ripples of a life well lived that continues to transform generations, like the life of Gretchen Rosenberg, whom we memorialized yesterday. You can see it in generational healing. You can see it in the forgiveness offered beyond the mercy of a single heart. You can see it in the resilience of a 5-year-old who once more comes bounding out, screaming, "Bo, Bo, wake up!" You can see it right here, right now. Something bigger than any one of our single lives could ever produce. Love is the power that holds us together. It is at the center. And if we discern with the eyes of the soul and the intelligence and emotion, and yes, the rational thought of mind, we can see it, we can know it, we can touch it, we can lean into it, we can live with it. That transformative power of love. Love divine. May we trust it, beloved. Beloved. May we live it. May we light up the world with it. And may we share it as our collective birthright and one day our return. In the light of that love, let the people say, Amen.
Good morning. My name is Amelia Ortiz. I am 15 years old, and for 3 years of my life, I went to Murray Grove Sleepaway Camp. Saying that this camp was a life-changing experience or a real eye-opener would be a huge understatement. Murray Grove completely changed my life for the better, and was not the typical summer camp experience most are familiar with. I first arrived at Murray Grove, a shy, nervous wreck who was waiting for the week to be over. Although I didn't have a phone at the time, I wasn't super jazzed about not being able to talk to friends or watch TV for a whole week. Horrible, I know. But when my parents kicked me out of the car with my pillow and suitcase in hand and pushed me into the lively common room, I knew that this week was going to be anything but horrible. On my first day, I met a girl named Addie. She and her older brother Corey had come for the week and were both close in age to me and my brother Brandon. We all hit it off immediately. Addie and I spent every waking minute together, doing cartwheels in the grass, rehearsing for the Talent No Talent show, and doing gymnastics in the pool. We would always sit together at the fantastic dinners and walk arm in arm to the outdoor chapel where we would listen to Reverend Carol's stories that would lull us to sleep. Our friendship even continued outside of Murray Grove, sledding together in the winter and monthly sleepovers. Addie was a true friend, and even though we haven't seen each other in a bit, I still look back on those times with her fondly. Murray Grove gave us such a great environment to create friends, it was almost hard not to. Everyone there was so kind and welcoming that the idea of not going back was out of the question. Murray Grove gave me the opportunity to truly be myself in a techless, freeing, and well-spirited environment. Many people say that they want to go tech-free for a week, but never actually get around to it. Leaving my technology at home for a week gave me the strength to say, maybe I don't need my phone all the time, which I think is a hard lesson many of us need to learn. Overall, Murray Grove is a place where friendships blossom, kindness flourishes, and the spirit of Unitarian Universalism can be seen everywhere you look. I hope that this testimonial will aid you in your decision to fund this beautiful camp, which I think truly deserves it. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I assure you, regardless of my appearance, I am only 17 years old. Murray Grove is nothing short of a hidden gem, and my years-long history there with friends and roommates was an absolute delight. From the moment we arrived, it was clear that this place was going to be something special. The warm and welcoming atmosphere, combined with the lush natural surroundings, set the stage for an unforgettable experience. First and foremost, the food at Murray Grove deserves a special mention. Every meal was not just a culinary delight, but also an opportunity for us to come together and share stories and laughter around the table. The delicious food added an extra layer of joy to our trip, and it was a reminder of the importance of simple pleasures. Our days were filled with thrilling activities like Gaga, which is similar to dodgeball, just with one ball, no teams, and a lot of extra steps, and volleyball. The competitive spirit that emerged during these games was infectious, and we had an absolute blast cheering each other on and vying for victory. Murray Grove had an endless supply of entertaining games and activities to keep us engaged, whether it was board games on a rainy afternoon or storytelling by the campfire under a starry night sky. There was never a dull moment. The variety of activities ensured that everyone, regardless of their interests, found something that they would love and enjoy. Yet, what truly set Murray Grove apart was the opportunity to engage with Unitarian Universalist lessons. These sessions were eye-opening and encouraged us to reflect on our beliefs, values, and our place in the world. The open and inclusive discussions allowed us to explore spirituality in a way that felt genuine and personal. It was an enlightening experience that left a lasting impact on all of us. Murray Grove offers a unique blend of camaraderie, adventure, personal growth, and spiritual exploration. It's a place where you can have a blast with friends, savor delicious meals, and learn valuable life lessons in a breathtaking natural setting. My years-long experience there was an enriching journey that I will cherish forever. I can recommend Murray Grove to anyone seeking a transformative and fun-filled retreat. This place has a piece of my heart, and I hope for those who are younger and plan to go, I hope you look forward to going and finding your own adventures.
My name is Jennifer May Ortiz. I've been a member here at Beacon since 2013. I'm here more often than not with my guy, Andrew Burden, and you've met Amelia and my son, Brandon. Brandon is almost 18. He's a high school senior, and Amelia's 15 and now a high school sophomore. Murray Grove and the Camping in the Grove program hold a very special place in our hearts. As you can see, my kids have settled comfortably into who they are as adolescents and emerging young adults. But as any parent can tell you, it's not always clear where your kids are going to end up. You hope for the best, but it takes a lot of commitment on behalf of you and your village to get where you're going. Amelia gets up on her own at 5-something each morning, keeps on top of demanding classes, and stays focused until her day ends late after 3 hours of dance practice. She loves animals and is a dedicated friend. Brandon is an excellent driver, has a job and a bank account. He's applying to college. As an aside, he's the architect of the labyrinth at 695 Springfield Avenue, which was his Eagle Scout project. The first year Brandon and Amelia went to Camping in the Grove program was the summer of 2017. Sending them to camp was the ultimate trust fall. Brandon was 11, a rising 7th grader, and Amelia was 9, a rising 5th grader. They were young and they were little. They had never been away from home before, like away, other than an overnight at Grandma and Grandpa's. They were my babies. What was I thinking? Well, I know what I was thinking. Sleepaway camp is a rite of passage that my children are privileged enough to experience. They'll get a supervised taste of being away. The staff is fabulous. They will love it. It will be great. We were warned ahead of time. There will be no tech. No cell phones, tablets, handheld video games, etc. Leave the devices at home. We were reassured that the Murray Grove staff would provide lots of communications through their Facebook page, and certainly homesickness or emergencies would be handled responsibly. So the trust fall began on drop-off day. We checked in, helped the kids find their rooms, and make up their beds. Yes, adults were encouraged to help with this step, as staff had discovered that in years past, kids who didn't know how to make a bed slept under the comforter on the bare mattress. A few hugs and kisses later, slightly suppressed looks of anxiety by everybody, and we pulled away. At that time, camp was 5 days, with a Sunday drop-off and a Thursday pickup. I don't think I have ever trawled social media as steadily as I did for those 5 days. The first photos were posted just a few hours later. Let me just say, sometimes pictures really do speak 1,000 words. What unfolded in a series of photographic moments over those 5 days were astounding. There were smiles, not just smiles, but heads thrown back in riots of laughter. There were my kiddos sitting on the grass in groups with a leader. There were children with heads bent over working on a service project, in the outdoor chapel, splashing in the saltwater pool, in some kind of low wooden walled sand pit with a ball, playing a game I now know is Gaga and is one of the best parts of camping in the Grove. A shot of Amelia sitting around a table eating unfamiliar food with kids she didn't know a few days before. A shot of Brandon sweeping the floor in the dining area. I nearly fainted. An indelible image of all the campers meditating with Reverend Carol Haig in the outdoors. Murray Grove is low tech, but very high touch. As Jermaine and Tooley recounted this morning, in case you didn't know, it's the site of the Potter Chapel where John Murray preached the first Universalist sermon in America. It still stands today, and children who attend camp there have the honor and privilege of seeing the chapel. It's a special place. My kids came away from that first experience at camping in the Grove forever changed. They were full of stories about everything, but mostly the people. Fellow campers, counselors, Reverend Carol, and Evelyn the cook. Talent, No Talent Night was a favorite. There was no doubt and no question that they would be going back next summer and the summer after that. Not even a pandemic could interrupt the momentum as they participated in the online programming so creatively crafted by the Murray Grove team. The special connection extends beyond camp, though. They've returned to participate in the Murray Grove Homecoming and have been back for Beacon coming-of-age events. Friendships forged at Murray Grove have endured over time, resulting in winter sleepovers, random catch-ups, and now graduation celebrations where it's as if no time has passed at all. I'd like to pause here. I mentioned that Brandon is a senior. Time is just rushing by, and I can't help but feel both nostalgic and sentimental. I will miss him when he starts the next steps in his life's journey, but I won't worry. Thanks in large part to the trust fall that began with camping in the Grove, I know he's going to be more than okay. In the small ways, he can make a bed, pack a suitcase to travel, and try new food. And in the big ways, he can venture into an unfamiliar situation and make connections. He can talk to people from different places and of different generations. He can build relationships, collaborate, and compromise. He can lead and be part of a team. I owe Murray Grove a debt of gratitude for starting both Brandon and Amelia and so many other young people on this amazing path. But we can also show them gratitude by offering the financial support they so greatly need to keep programs like Camping in the Grove and Coming of Age going. Please give generously today. our morning offering will now be gratefully received. Thank you.
You have me in tears. As a mother of a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old, you're just like, wow, those are the experiences that, we all want to remember or to experience. And I do remember my camp days. And at camp, I remember feeling, mine was music camp, of course, but I remember being able to explore myself, and you're surrounded by nature. I was in Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont, but those type of things are very special, and I'm so glad you made me aware of it. I didn't even know, so yay. My kids will be going when I'm ready to let them go. I'm not ready, yeah. So this next song that Vicki and I are going to offer most definitely has to do with love of ourselves and love of those next to us. It's from the great American composer and lyricist Stephen Schwartz. It's from a musical that he made called Children of Eden. And the words are just wonderful, and this came this morning where I'm just being informal, and we're going to make a wonderful touch on hearts and our own to be reminded of this song. It's called The Spark of Creation. We create beauty, we create love, we create our relationships, our community, and that's good, right? Until I discover or inspiration, the spark of creation, the spark of creation. May it burn forever, the spark of creation. I am a keeper of the flame. We think all we want is a lifetime of leisure, each perfect day the same, an endless vacation. Well, that's all right if you're a kind of crustacean, but when you're born with an imagination, sooner or later you're feeling the fire get hotter and higher, the spark of creation.
Wow, thank you, Rosina. It is so good to see all of you here. It warms my heart. Whether you're here for the first time or whether you're here for the 500th time, you are welcome. Whether you're a Unitarian or a Universalist or decide to become one after the service today, or if you're an atheist or a staunch believer, or none of the above, you are welcome. For those of you who are joining us online, please take a moment to introduce yourself to the chat, to welcome each other, maybe say something about yourself or about how the service today touched you or made you feel. If you're here in person, please do the same thing after the service. Reach out to people you might not have met before, welcome them, share something about yourself. Please don't forget, for those of you who are new, there is a connecting session, 12:15 in the library. If you want to join online, there's a link to join that remotely as well. Again, welcome. Please now rise as you're willing or able and join me in the well-known hymn 1021. Lean on me.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have things you need to borrow, for no one can fill those of your needs that you won't let show. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the
when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'd understand. We all need somebody to lean. One more time. All right, lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Yeah.
Beloved, would you take hands with one another and maybe lean a little this morning? Thank you, Rosina. Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, Will, for ensuring that these words reach far and wide. Sammy on sound, Wim, Amelia, Brandon, Jennifer. Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. We close with the words of Reverend David Bumba, Minister Emeritus, who was raised a Universalist and often spoke these words at the conclusion of a service here.
Beneath all our diversity, behind all of our differences, there is a unity of the Spirit that makes us one.
And binds us forever together, in spite of time and death and the space between the stars.
May we go from this sacred hour, grounded in that unity of spirit, healed by its love, and made whole.
Amen.
Do not leave your cares at the door. Do not leave them there when you come into this place. Be open to forgiveness and transformation. Come on in, you are welcome here. And do not leave your cares at the door. Oh, bring your pain and sorrow and joy. There's a place for them upon the altar of life. Be open to forgiveness and transformation. Come on in, you are welcome here. And do not leave your cares at the door. This is a place of grace, place of losing and finding our way upon the winding road. Meeting and parting, stumbling and starting over. Every story is sacred here, even yours, even yours. So come on in and do not leave your cares at the door. Do not leave them there when you come into this place. Be open to forgiveness and transformation. Come on in, you are welcome in. Come in and do not leave your cares at